Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about front-end and complexity, so let's get into it. So the question in question was pretty much, Frederick, do you think that front-end developers complicate their own problems too much? And there was a little bit of a backstory here. He was basically stating that he was working on this project, and now that React hooks has become a thing, his co-workers are saying that they're going to rewrite the whole code base to use hooks instead of the already established patterns. And the short answer is yes. I really do think that most of the problems in front-end are self-imposed by front-end developers. They are basically they're hanging themselves. Like all front-end developers, more or less. Well, not all of them, but quite a few of them. And the reason is pretty much the same reason I've given in other videos where I've explained that there is no culture in front-end around good architecture, good decision-making, clean code, or just general sustainability. There is nothing like that at all. Now they will claim, like front-end community bloggers and things of this nature, they will claim that this is the case, and maybe for them that is the case. But you see, the thing about being a guru is that you're often very alone in being a guru. The average front-end developer does not consider a lot of these factors when they're working, because that's simply not part of the norm. The norm is that you do pretty much whatever the JavaScript and front-end community news channels are telling you to do. So if, as an example, this person is realizing now, if, for example, Facebook goes out and says that, hey, React hooks is now out, you should be using them. They don't even have to say that, because technically they haven't really said that you should rewrite your entire code base into hooks. It's just another tool to use. They don't have to say that, because all of the bloggers who can make some noise around hooks and get everybody excited about hooks, not necessarily because you should rewrite your entire system in hooks, but rather because that benefits them. They get more readers, more money, ad revenues, etc., etc. They need something to promote, because promoting means that people get excited about it and it starts a trend wave, and a trend wave brings a lot of income and traffic to their sites. Not necessarily because it's the best thing. That's all that needs to happen for some developers at some company who don't actually have the professional maturity to understand what a good decision is and what a bad decision is, to get excited and then add in that new shiny little tool. And the thing that should be happening, which is simply not the case, is that they should look at their own project in a very similar way to how a construction worker would approach fixing a building or something like that. If you have a really old building from I don't know how far back, you're not going to stand in front of that building and say, hey, you know what, we should just strip out all of the supporting beams and switch them out for something else, unless you actually know that that is what you need to do. Because you will accept as the builder that, all right, I might not be able to build this house or this building or work on this building in the same way I would on a modern skyscraper, because this is an old building. It has been built in a certain way, and as long as that certain way is still working, then I should try to align with that way of building it, because it's very likely that I will actually mess up or create a real big problem if I try to introduce, if I try to tear down the building, or if I try to introduce a modern way of working that doesn't actually fit in very well with the way it's already been built. That's something that front-end developers never do, or very rarely. What the norm is, as this person is realizing, is that they usually will either try to rewrite things or they try to shim in things. Well, I call it shim programming, where they will basically just add another permutation, like, oh yeah, we've been doing everything this way up until this point, and now today someone read a really nice blog article, so now we're going to do it in this way instead. So now we have 2 ways of doing it, and then 6 months later a third thing comes along, and now you have 3 things, and then 4 things, and it keeps on going until people have a different sort of problem, which is my favorite problem, and this is that the same damn people who caused this issue is going to, a year later, say, the build times are so slow. It's really ugly, and I think it's so messy. We have so many different ways of doing things. It's such a hassle to work in a front-end project. And then they, of course, quit the company and start doing that exact thing on another company's code base. Well, not necessarily. That last step is a little bit optional, but it does happen. So I do believe that this complexity problem that this question is about definitely is there, and I believe that it is completely self-imposed. It is like for me, it feels very often it feels like dealing with kids in a candy shop. They have all these options, but they're simply not mature enough to understand that if they eat all of it, they're going to get sick and destroy their teeth. That is how it feels. It really feels like dealing with kids. And I'm not talking about just junior developers here. I'm talking about people who have been doing this for years. And they still fuck up because they, as everybody else, they're on this cycle of getting excited about the next thing that's coming out, and then they push that into the code base, and the problem just kind of continues flowing. The only thing that I can give you here, if you're like me and you want to try to stop this sort of problem, is to do the only thing that I know actually works, that actually solves this problem in a permanent fashion, and that is that your company needs to elect or have some individual that understands what good software architecture in front-end actually looks like, and a person who is mature enough to understand that you need to settle down on some tools. You need to stabilize the code base and remove the privilege that a lot of these front-end developers have, which is that they can add in anything whenever they want. You need to lock shit down. You need to really lock it down. And that is only possible if you have someone who knows how to actually do that. And there's not that many companies that have the luxury of having a truly experienced front-end developer who knows how to do this. Call it a front-end architect type of thing almost. It's not that many companies who do have that, but the companies that I know really do this well, such as say PayPal, what they usually have is a group of people who are dedicated to empowerment and velocity, improving velocity for the other teams within that company. And their job is pretty much to pick a shared component library. They develop the shared component library and everybody else just consumes it, which puts them in the power position, because it doesn't if we're going towards standards, which is a very good thing, even if it's just at the company level, the people who work on the common and the shared libraries are usually in the power position when it comes to picking tooling, because if they're responsible to providing all the different components and all of these different widgets and things that are used to make up the actual site, it is more important for everybody that they are empowered to make the right decisions than it is for everybody to be able to use whatever they want, because that's where the chaos starts. So if you can at least establish that sort of hierarchy, then that's a very, very good thing. So what I want you to take away from this is that I believe that the complexity that front-end developers produce complexity at an alarming rate is absolutely true. Like most front-end developers, they will just go on this endless cycle. I have so far never met, I've met only let's be honest here, I've only met a handful of front-end developers who are able who have grown out of this. I will tell you right now, I count them on my 5 fingers. Most front-end developers that I deal with are the sort of people who actually do this. Like they produce legacy at least at 1 month on a monthly to 6 month basis, almost always. There's some new innovation, some new cool thing, some new library. They add that in, they get excited about it. Nobody else uses it, and it becomes legacy within the next 6 months. And it's just something that needs to be maintained. And all of this is pretty much self-imposed because, as I said, they're basically kids in a candy shop. They can't control themselves. They have no professional maturity at all. They're simply doing the thing that the community is telling them is the next best thing without thinking it through. And the way to solve this is that you need a more mature front-end architect type of person, or a group of people who are dedicated to setting the standards for the company. And they have final say on what goes into the tech stack. And their focus should at all times be to standardize all of the visual components and to stabilize the dependencies that the project actually has. And without something like that, it's almost impossible to control everybody. Because if you give everybody the possibility of adding whatever they want, it becomes complete chaos. And that is the reality of frontend today. Have a great day.